Alright class, we're going to work on a project today where we're going to create a smart object. And when creating smart objects for this particular class, they're going to be created basically the exact same way over and over and over. Now we've talked about why we use a smart object, and as we walk our way through this particular example, I'll do a little bit more explanation. In our example image that we have here, we see that we're using one image, and that one image has three separate layers, even though if we look at our layers panel right now, we only see the one layer. But looking at our example image, we see that there's a background image. There's a second image layer, the middle layer here, and then the top image layer, giving us the three layers. Now, although we have three layers, we're only working with one image. And this particular sample image here is pretty easy and nothing very difficult for us to do. The way we're going to get started, first we're going to create our base layer, the background layer. That layer is going to serve as our background to the other two layers. So first we want to create a layer. From the menu bar, select layer, new, and new layer. And we can see that creating a new layer, we can also do shift plus control plus N to get a new layer. In our new layer dialog, I'm simply going to change the name and call it image, and click OK. There we see we have two layers now. And remember, when working with smart objects, even though we have an empty layer and we've named the layer, we must always fill that layer with something, a color. And looking at our example, I see that our image layers has a white border. So when we fill our blank layer, our blank image layer, we want to fill it with a color, anything other than white. And to fill that, from the menu bar, select edit, fill, and in the use, I'm going to select black, which is absolutely fine, and click OK. Now we've created a layer, we named the layer, and now we've filled it. Now to convert that layer to a smart object, we simply right click that layer in the layers panel and then click on convert to smart object. Notice this little icon that we have here now, and if we hover over it, it says smart object thumbnail. Next, we need to duplicate our smart object. And there's a couple of ways that we can do this, but the quick way of creating a new layer or a copy of this particular layer is to hold down the control key and tap the J key one time. And we see now we have two layers. Now what we need to do, if we remember our example, let's go back and look at our example. We have the one main layer in the background plus the two overlapping layers. So next what we're going to create is this middle layer here, that overlapping layer start. So on that top layer, on the topmost layer that we just created by doing a copy, we want to make sure that that layer is highlighted. From the menu, we want to select edit. We want to select free transform, and notice we get an X across our image indicating that it is a smart object. Now what I want us to do is at the top on the toolbar here, I want us to hover over and click this little chain link. It's called maintain aspect ratio, and what that will allow us to do is drag in the corner. Anytime we're changing the aspect ratio or changing the size of something in Photoshop, we always want to maintain the aspect ratio. So here I'm simply going to drag down to whatever size you think is appropriate. Here maybe a little bit over a quarter the size of the total image. Now I can either double click inside to accept the change, or I can press the enter key. Here I'm going to double click inside. Okay, now looking in my layers panel, I can see that I have downsized my smart object layer on that top layer, but now I need to set that white border, and that white border is actually called a stroke. And there's a couple of ways we can do that. I can either double click in the blue area of my layers panel, or I can go down at the bottom of the layers panel and hover over add a layer style, and from there select stroke. By default, Photoshop gives us a black stroke, but we want white. So in this little color box there, we'll click that box, brings up the color picker or the select stroke color, and in the upper left hand corner we want to click that little white corner. We see that our current color is black and our new color is white, which that's exactly what we want, and click OK. Notice on our box down here now we have a white stroke, but if we look at our stroke structure, the position is outside. We want our position to be inside. Inside is going to give us a nice sharp corner. And in here, I'm going to select a stroke size. I say maybe let's go up to, I'm doing 6. Your stroke might be a bit different from my stroke size, which is absolutely fine. And I also want to set a drop shadow, so I'm going to click on drop shadow. It gives me my dialog box here, but it's kind of hard to see a black drop shadow on a drop shadow there. So what I'm going to do for right now, I'm just going to drag the distance out to 7 and leave everything as is right now because I can't see it. But I do know that my angle here, if I place it at maybe about 145 degree of an angle, it should give me a nice little drop shadow. And then I'm going to click OK. Next, I want to duplicate this image layer. We're going to do the same keystrokes we did before. Control J. Tap that key one time. Now we have our 3 image layers. And now we want to move them around. So I'm going to press the V key on the keyboard to make sure I have the move tool. I'm on the top layer, so I'm going to move it up. And I'm going to give it just a little bit of rotation. So I'm going to click from the menu bar, Edit, Transform, and I'm clicking on Rotate. And in here I'm just going to rotate it to the right just a bit. Next, we're selecting the next layer down, that middle smart object layer. We're moving it up. And here I'm just going to give it just a little bit of a twist also. From the menu bar, Edit, Transform, and Rotate. Just to rotate it a little bit. Okay, now we need to fill one of our smart objects with an image by doing a place. So while I'm on this middle layer, I'm simply going to double click smart object icon. Notice I get a second tab. Now I must place an image. Now note, my image is landscape, so I want to place a landscape image. So from the menu bar, File, Place, And here I've downloaded some photos, so I'm simply going to select one of the photos that I've downloaded. Here I've downloaded a picture of Whitney Houston, and I'm going to select it and then click place. There Whitney Houston's photo appears. Remember that little button at the top, the little chain there, to maintain aspect ratio. Let's click that. Then drag out from the corners. Remember, you're only dragging the corners only. Then drag down and out from that little corner there. Now we can double click inside or press enter. I'm going to double click. Next I'm going to locate the little X there to close and say yes. And there we see our smart object is now filled with the image of Whitney Houston. But if you remember our sample image, the background layer is blurred. So now we want to apply a blur to our background image. Remember that bottom layer is serving as our background image. So to blur it, from the menu bar select filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And from here you can determine how much blur you want. A little blur, medium amount of blur. You can also go really crazy with the blur. But I just want maybe about 3 pixels of blur and click OK. Notice too my drop shadows there. They look pretty good. I like that. That looks pretty good. And remember, because we have each one of these smart object on its own separate layer, we can move these around any way that you want them. If you want to do a different twist, from the menu bar, edit, transform, and rotate. There you could put more of a twist or rotate it back the other way. It's totally up to you. You have total command. And the neat thing about doing this is you only need to create it one time. Once you've created it the first time, there's nothing else for you to create. So next we want to save this as a template. So from the menu bar, I'm selecting File, Save As. And here I am simply going to give it a name. What is it? 3-layer template. And notice by default Photoshop names it that PSD extension because we have layers there. And click Save. When that maximize compatibility window come up, just don't pay it any attention. You can actually check the box to don't show again and click OK. Okay, that's all it is to this particular example. Have fun.